Maybe.
Hello, everybody. God bless you. This is Eric, aka Wolfbitten, and with me is Jack, Jakk. And tonight we're going to have just a little bit of discussion on the origin of life. Now, as an atheist, Jack has to assume that abiogenesis is a true thing. As a creationist, oh, of course you do.
Well, I mean, I do, but as an atheist, that is not a necessity. I don't know why you keep saying it is.
Of course it is. Don't be ridiculous. An atheist can't accept creation. You've only got, when it comes to the origin of life in the universe, you've only got two choices. Did it come about through abiogenesis or did it come about through creation? Now, as an atheist, you reject creationism. So the only thing that you have left is abiogenesis.
And you're aware that this is a dichotomy, right?
It's not a false dichotomy. You see,
well, it is.
That's what I'm saying.
You yourself linked earlier in the day.
So as an atheist, you haven't even thought your own viewpoint through.
No, I'm saying you yourself mentioned in the chat a dude who is both an atheist and does not accept abiogenesis.
No, I did not say he was an atheist.
Hoyle? Fred Hoyle?
I did not say he was an atheist. What I said was he didn't accept that abiogenesis occurred on Earth. He thought that that life on Earth originated through panspermia. But we're not talking about just life originating on Earth. We're talking about the origin of life in the universe. So if you're going to say that life originated, then it had to have arisen somehow. If you're talking from the atheist point of view, it had to come about through abiogenesis.
Through natural processes, sure.
Well, how do you say natural?
With an N.
Yeah, well, no, abiogenesis is unnatural. It's an unnatural process. You see what?
Chemical. Why is it unnatural?
Because every life form that we can point to today came about through at any time. Any life form that you can point to has come about through one process called biogenesis. Biogenesis is the exact opposite of abiogenesis. Biogenesis states that life only comes about through living organisms. That's all. Life, it takes a life to bring forth a life.
Is God an organism?
Hold on a second. Of course. And it goes on to state that life never arises through non-life. That's the theory of biogenesis, that life only comes about from another life, and it never comes about through non-life, just randomly forming. So abiogenesis, on the other hand, states that life originated through non-life. And so what we observe in nature is biogenesis. This makes abiogenesis unnatural, and yet you're calling it a natural act. It's actually an absurdity.
I already have like 3, or at least, points that I need to go over, because there are certain things that I feel the need to correct.
Well, there's nothing you can correct that I've said, but go ahead. You can try to make your point.
Okay. You're confusing like you did with...
No, I'm not confusing a thing, son. So, but go ahead. But go ahead.
Okay. You're confusing abiogenesis with spontaneous generation. And
no, I'm not. I'm not confusing the two at all.
Okay. Second thing, and we can get into these each more in depth if you want. I doubt it, but sure. The second thing is, when I say natural versus unnatural, I'm talking about, on one hand, you have an explanation that is within the bounds of what happens in reality. Okay, things that adhere to the laws of physics, obey like chemical variants, like there are things that can happen and the things that can happen naturally, as opposed to the unnatural, which requires some form of miraculous or magical intervention. However you want to do it, gods, angels, demons.
Now, if God is a living organism and a living entity,
right.
then how is it unnatural that God would bring forth life?
That was my third point, though, because that was the thing that I really want to dig into. You said God is an organism.
Mm-hmm.
Do you just mean that he's alive, or does he fit the definition of what an organism is?
Well, what do you think an organism is?
A living thing that, and I have to do the whole asterisk next to living because there's an explanation there. A living thing that exists. So like but hold on. Let me.
Okay, so
one of hold on.
What I want
was in the middle of like 3 different things, so you kind of caught me off guard with that one.
Okay, well, what I want you to do is tell me how you're saying abiogenesis
is more credible than God. Yeah,
you're saying that it's a natural thing. You're saying it's a natural process. Now, how is it a natural process when it's never observed in nature and has never been recreated in a lab, and every life form you can point to has come about through biogenesis? Now, you tell me how that makes abiogenesis a natural occurrence.
You keep using biogenesis as though it is the necessary antithesis of abiogenesis. But in actuality, it's just those 2 words are kind of similar.
No,
like
they're
biogenesis
not.
is something completely different from the opposite of abiogenesis. You do get that, right?
No,
like,
no. I don't think you know what you're talking about. You see,
sure.
Biogenesis states that it is the exact opposite of abiogenesis.
Can we go over the paper written by people who actually know what they're talking about?
Hold on.
Right.
Biogenesis states, and it's in the very theory. You need to read, I see. Biogenesis states in its very theory that it is the antithesis of abiogenesis, that it is the opposite of abiogenesis, in that life only comes forth through life. That's the only way it comes forth, and it never comes forth through non-life. That is the theory of biogenesis. That makes it the antithesis of abiogenesis, okay? Because abiogenesis states that life comes from non-life.
Yeah, that
okay. So what I'm asking is, how are you calling abiogenesis a natural occurrence, a natural process, when it's the natural process is biogenesis? And we never observe abiogenesis, whether it's in nature or in the lab. So how are you getting this natural?
Can I answer, or are you going to keep talking over me?
Go ahead. I'd like for you to answer that.
Okay. First of all, biogenesis is not a scientific law, nor is it the thing you're saying it is beyond that point, nor is it the opposite of abiogenesis. So when you ask me, have I stopped beating my wife yet? And I reply with an answer that is not yes or no.
Come on, let's don't be stupid now. I'm going to read something to you right here.
Go for it.
And this says, abiogenesis is the theory that life can come from non-life. Spontaneous generation was the theory that life came from non-life. So abiogenesis and spontaneous generation, we can see, are pretty much the same thing. But then it goes on to say, just a second, I'm going to pull up Biogenesis now.
Is it the same online dictionary? Because you sent me these before.
There's dozens of
online dictionaries.
that I can pull from, not
And
just online dictionaries. I can pull from all different sorts of sites right here.
Anything with an abstract and a conclusion that was written by an MD or a PhD, anything like that? A scientific paper. Do you have a scientific paper, or do you just have definitions?
This is biogenesislabs.com. Okay. Then we also have Biology Online. Biogenesis refers to the process whereby a living thing comes from another living thing, primarily of the same type. In other words, everything bringing forth after its own kind. From Britannica.com, the principle of biogenesis, namely that organisms arise only from the reproduction of other organisms. Now, that was from Britannica. Then from,
what was the first thing? Biogenesis what?
What?
The website, biogenesis.com or?
Biogenesis-labs.com.
-labs.com. Okay, that's why I wasn't finding it. Okay, sorry, continue.
Then you have Britannica that says that it's the theory, namely that organisms only arise from reproduction of other organisms. And then we have, let me see, the production of living organisms from other living organisms. And Biogenesis, sourceforge.net, a visual fashion, the process has involved the evolution of unicellular organisms in nature. Okay, let me pull up some more. All of these are very, very clear. It doesn't matter what you go to. Biogenesis is the idea that a living organism has come forth from another living organism, and through no other way, no other form of abiogenesis, it has not come forth from non-living matter, and it also brings forth after its own type or kind. In other words, bacteria brings forth bacteria, eggs, spider eggs bring forth spiders, chicken eggs bring forth chickens, that sort of a thing. Now, biogenesis proves true every time a cell divides. How many billions of times a day does that happen? Every time an egg hatches, every time there's a live birth, biogenesis proves true. And not one time can you point to a life form whereby abiogenesis has occurred. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Sure.
What is a kind?
What is a kind? You know, I'm going to tell you, people act so ignorant over that term kind. Kind is elemental. It's like, how stupid would it be of me to ask, what is a species? Okay.
I mean, that would not be a stupid question.
Well, it is a stupid question. A species.
There's like 6 different ways to measure that, though.
No, not when it comes to sexually reproductive animals. A species.
Well, no, that's the biological species concept, but like there are other ones too.
Well, you have plants, you have animals. Okay, we're talking about sexually reproductive.
Horses and donkeys aren't the same species.
We're talking
interbreed.
How do you know they're not the same species? You see, the definition of species.
Define what the word means.
Here's what the word means. The definition of species, in case you don't know it, is that a species are like animals that are able to interbreed and produce a fertile offspring. Okay, that's what a species is.
Eric, why do I come on here just to have you talk at me?
What? Well, we're talking about the origin of life. What I asked you to do was point out where abiogenesis is a natural event, a natural occurrence.
So, again, the distinction that I make between natural and unnatural is one can be explained using science and one can be explained away using magic. There's a difference.
Okay. Then explain abiogenesis through science.
Okay, sure. First, astrophysics, all of that, and then astrochemistry, all of that. And then we get into, let's see, things that are actually taking place exclusively on Earth, the parts that would have to do that. And that's
you're not even being
chemistry, geochemistry.
You're not even being coherent. What I'm asking you is, through science, show me abiogenesis occurring.
And I'm in the middle of talking about whole fields that represent steps along that whole process.
No, just point me to can you point me to a life form that came about through abiogenesis?
So you want an easy answer.
I want a nutshell answer. I don't want a BS answer.
Okay. Well, the nutshell answer is there's no easy answer. You can't just describe something that takes millions of years and several processes interlocking to do the thing that it did.
Yeah. According to
okay, this happened, and I can explain it in a single sentence.
Okay. So
explain the human, just the human condition in a single sentence.
You hypothesize.
Explain Shakespeare in a single sentence.
You hypothesize. Okay, let's keep this simple. You observe that life exists.
Yes.
Your hypothesis is abiogenesis occurred.
My hypothesis would be, because you do this weird thing that I never see in any other debate circle, where you'll insist on
scientific
telling
method
my position.
Okay, am I wrong? Is your position not that abiogenesis occurred? Or is your position, am I right, your position is abiogenesis occurred?
My position would be abiogenesis likely occurred.
Okay, likely. So you're leaving room for creation then.
No, I'm leaving room for another natural answer, not the magical answer.
Like what? You have creation.
I don't know.
You have creation.
Not knowing, Eric.
You have creation. You have abiogenesis. Now, to explain the origin of life in the universe, what is your third possibility?
I don't need one.
So you don't have a third possibility.
No.
Okay, that's exactly my point. You've only got two possibilities.
And from the two, one seems infinitely more likely.
How?
Because
how does the unnatural process that you never observed seem more likely?
Because the natural process that I've never observed is more likely than the unnatural deity you would propose instead.
You never observed a live birth?
You've never have you ever observed your deity?
Yes, I have. Are you saying you've never observed a live birth?
I was there for the birth of my daughter.
Okay, so then you have observed biogenesis at work.
I've observed birth. That's different from biogenesis.
That is biogenesis, life coming forth from life. That and bringing forth.
You're forgetting the exclusively.
Hold on, and bringing forth after its own kind. That is biogenesis.
Still don't have a definition for that word.
What?
Still don't have a definition for that word.
For what word?
Kind. What is a kind?
What is a kind?
What is a kind?
The same thing as a type. Biogenesis explains it as a type. For instance, hold on. You asked for something. Biogenesis explains it as a type, TYPE, quote unquote. I use the same thing. You better get more weed than that. You're going to need more than that. I'm going to tell you right now. Okay. So in scientific literature, it's referred to as a type. Like you have bacteria bringing forth bacteria, spiders bringing forth spiders, roaches bringing forth roaches, chickens bringing forth chickens, humans bringing forth humans, each bringing forth after its own kind or type. Yes.
What about cats?
What about cats?
Are cats all the same kind?
What?
Cats.
What?
Felines.
What? Are you going to say like lions and tigers, for instance?
Sure. Cats.
Okay.
Are all felines the feline kind, or are there types of felines within the feline kind? Or are there multiple feline kinds?
There are different types of cats, are there not?
There's also different types of humans, are there not?
Okay. And?
I mean, not to the extent that we see in cats.
Okay, and?
But like, I'm trying to figure out how you measure this so that way I can draw a clear line and know exactly what you mean when you say kind.
The same
Because
thing
I've
as type.
never heard a definition of that word, only...
Well, it's very simple. It's the same type, okay? Now,
That's synonym,
if you're going to a science class and they're teaching you about biogenesis, are you going to act like you can't understand what they mean by type? Sitting in college, are you seriously going to sit in a class saying, I don't understand what you mean by type? I'm so confused. Why do atheists do this, man? I don't act like that when you say species or family or genus. So why do you got to do that and act like you're so helpless you can't understand what a type or a kind is? I don't understand that.
Remember, the first time I talked to you in the group chat that we're both in, weren't you going on and on about how there's like all this waffling going on about how species is one thing when it's one way, it's another thing when it's another way?
No, you didn't hear anything like that. What you heard me say about species is that people that are evolutionists, for instance, try to redefine species and misapply species, and they classify animals in a wrong way to try to give an illusion of evolution where there is no evolution. For instance, mankind, modern man, is a perfect example. I could use dogs. I can use dogs, wolves, coyotes. Okay, dogs, wolves, and coyotes can all interbreed, and yet they have coyotes set up as a different species. Hold on a second, and listen to my point.
I got a question.
That's all right. Just give me a second and listen to my point, or you're not going to hear it and you're not going to understand it. See, the point is, when you have in science, for instance, the classification of canids, okay? You have dogs and wolves, dogs and gray wolves classified in the same species, and then you have coyotes classified as a completely different species. Now, the definition of species are like animals that are able to interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Dude, we have coy dogs. We have coy wolves and dogs that have crossbred with coyotes. So they have misapplied, they have misclassified coyotes, and it gives an impression of evolution where there is no evolution. And we have the same with mankind. We have mankind, Denisovans, Homo sapiens, Denisovans, and Neanderthals. All three interbred, and yet all three classified differently. When it's giving the impression of evolution where there is no evolution. Since we've all three interbred, Denisovans, Neanderthals, and modern Homo sapiens, since we've all interbred and produced fertile offspring, we are all by definition the same species. So you tell me, why are we classified differently?
We good? All right. Well, you're referring to almost exclusively the biological species concept.
Yeah, and I'm asking you, why are we classified differently?
Because we don't use that 100% of the time.
Why? That's my point. we misapply these things and give them a...
I can answer your question.
Go ahead.
The answer to why we use multiple different species concepts is because nature does not fit into the nice, neat little boxes that mankind likes to organize things
No,
into.
no, no, no. Are you saying that?
You,
Are you saying? Are
you're
you
saying
saying
no to the answer, but that's the answer.
that's the answer? So it's really hard to understand the concept that Homo
No.
sapiens, Neanderthals, and Denisovans all interbred and produced fertile offspring.
Yes, so by the biological species concept, they would be the same species in the same way that
Thank you. That's all I'm
a
saying.
horse and a donkey are the same species from the perspective of the biological species concept.
Exactly. And so
One of many possible ways to draw that line, because lines are not clear in nature. It's something people do.
hold on.
I still have my question. I still have my question though.
Hold on.
I still have a question.
Wait a second. I've got a rebuttal for that. The rebuttal is this. Now you admit that we have the clear definition that a species, it is a clear definition. Don't shake your head no.
And
It
I'm
is
saying
hold on. It is
shaking my head to the A.
hold on. It is a very clear definition that
Yes.
a biological species, when it regards sexually reproductive animals, are those like animals that are capable of interbreeding and producing fertile offspring. That's very simple definition. So it's very simple. It's no mystery. There's no head scratching. Oh God, I got to pull out my hair because I can't figure this out. They're able to interbreed and produce fertile offspring, but gosh, they look a little bit different, so they can't be the same species. It ain't like that at all. They're not helpless. They can look at these animals that are all capable of interbreeding and producing fertile offspring and saying, we've got them classified wrong. They are the same species. It's that easy.
You good?
Yes. Tell me why it isn't that easy.
Because there are 4 of them.
What do you mean there's 4 of them?
Definitions that we use for different things, like special relativity versus general relativity. It's all relativity. But depending on what you're talking about is what side of it you're talking about. There's typological, there's nominalistic, there's the biological species concept, there's the evolutionary species concept. Which one are you using?
Well, which one have we been using for the last 300 years?
Having tenure does not make it a good idea. It just means it's been around longer. Look at Flat Earth.
What I see is you're making excuses why we don't use the biological definition of species.
We do. So we don't use it exclusively, is what I was saying.
Well, why don't they? That's what I'm asking you. We have an exclusive definition here, okay, and a specific definition. And the only reason not to use it is to give the impression of evolution where there is no evolution. Okay,
right.
That's all it does.
That brings me back to my original question from back when. Can I ask that?
Go ahead.
Is an African painted dog the same kind as a dog? Because they can't interbreed.
I don't know anything about the African painted dog.
What about the raccoon dog?
What about it? I don't know anything about a raccoon dog.
Same thing. These are animals that we call dogs that are canids that cannot interbreed with wolves. They can't interbreed with coyotes. They can't interbreed with dogs.
So then they're obviously a different species, aren't they?
Yes.
Okay. So.
But I'm trying to find a standardized set of requirements.
You see, I have no problem
from the other dogs.
Is the definition of species, dude. I have no problem with it. Why do you? The definition of species is very clear. Like animals that are capable of interbreeding and producing fertile offspring. If they can't, they're another species. It's that simple. Why is it the creationists have no problem with that, but atheists do? I don't understand. I'll tell you why. It's because
Speciation
atheists
can happen.
because this definition screws the atheist. It does. Because then you have to prove that.
Speciation happen, Eric.
Let me ask you: is Neanderthal an example of the evolution of mankind?
That's a really weird way to phrase that question. Do you mean we evolved from Neanderthal?
No. Is
Do
the
you mean
Neanderthal
step along the way, or
is the Neanderthal an example of the evolution of mankind?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Okay, the Neanderthal is classified as a cousin to mankind.
It is of the Homo genus, yes.
As a cousin of mankind. So do you believe that they are an example of the evolution of man?
Man is in us, or man is in the Homo genus? This is why I need you to define terms, because I have no idea what you're asking me.
Do you believe they're an example of the evolution of man?
Repeating the question does not clarify the question.
Okay, so you don't understand what man is.
Do you mean the Homo genus, or do you mean Homo sapien?
What mankind is. Okay.
Homo sapien, or do you mean just
why is this very simple question so hard for you?
Because it's not a simple question.
Yes, it is. It is for me. Do you, yes or no, do you believe that the Neanderthal is one example of the evolution of mankind?
Is mankind us? Or is mankind Homo sapien?
I'll let you decide that for yourself.
Okay, so there's a few ways that I could answer this that I have to now explain because the person I'm talking to can't clarify a question.
It's just a yes or a no.
Well, hold on. Let me give my answer so that then you'll have my answer and not the answer you want me to give, I guess.
I don't want you to give any particular answer. I just want a yes or no. Is the Neanderthal an example of the evolution of mankind?
Okay, so from my perspective, mankind really is more of an us thing, like a Homo sapien thing. So in the sense of the evolutionary history of Homo sapiens, sort of. I mean, we do share some DNA with them in the sense of having a common ancestor with them, but we also share DNA with them because we also interbred with them.
Okay, so, and you don't understand that makes us the same species?
From a biological species standpoint, yes.
So that's not an example of the evolution of mankind. They're just another. They're just another example of a race of mankind.
Well, we have a different genome. Like we've sequenced hominid DNA from different places across the world, and you have different variations of this spread throughout populations all across the world.
Do you have the same DNA as
21andMe tests?
Do you have the same DNA?
What your ancestry is?
Do you have the same DNA as a pygmy? No, you do not. Do you have the same DNA of a Zulu? No, you do not.
I don't have the same DNA as my sister.
Do you have the same DNA as an Italian? No, they're all different. Okay.
Well, actually, yeah, I got that one.
Okay. Well, Italians, Zulus, pygmies.
Like how Italian are we talking?
Scandinavians, Neanderthals.
We're talking
Neanderthals, Denisovans, all have different DNA, and yet we are able to hold on.
DNA.
Yet we are all able to interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Therefore, by biological definition, we are the same species, and so it's not an example of the evolution of mankind. It's only an example of a race of mankind that has died out, or two races in the case of Neanderthal and Denisovan of mankind, modern man, that have died out, gone extinct. It would be the same as saying, okay, Zulus, some kind of a horrible disease struck the Zulus, and all of a sudden, all the Zulus were wiped out. We would still have some of the Zulu DNA in a certain proportion, a certain portion of the rest of the people that were alive on Earth. Okay, a certain portion of them would have Zulu DNA. And it doesn't mean that just because they went extinct, they're no longer Homo sapiens. Of course they're Homo sapiens. And in the same way, Neanderthals and Denisovans are Homo sapiens, even though they're not classified as Homo sapiens. We have but that's getting us away from the origin of life.
It's weird that you bring up DNA, though, when we were just having this discussion last time, and you still have not answered that question.
Oh, yes, I did answer that. I answered that quite clearly. Now, here is your question.
How much of the...
Go ahead. Go ahead and ask your question, and I will answer it again, and then we'll get back to the origin of life.
My question, I guess, in a more structured format would be, and it's still a pretty standard question. Hang on. Oh. All right, just a moment. I'm gonna have to go shortly because my daughter is calling.
Okay. Okay.
I really want to get at least an answer out of this.
Go ahead and ask your question.
If genetic similarity does not denote relatedness, as your position would require, why then do paternity tests work based on genetic similarity comparison?
Okay, well, we know through testing that genetic comparisons between one set of humans or one human and another human, genetic testing can show some sort of a relatedness, because we also can have the we've had enough experience with this. We've had enough experience. We've had enough tests with this to prove that, for instance, I can prove who my father was using DNA. Okay. Now, my brother could be tested, and we can see that we have the same genome and probably the same father. And then when my father's DNA is tested, it does prove that we have exactly the same father. Now, there's two different types of DNA tests. There's the mitochondrial DNA and there's the nuclear DNA. So the mitochondrial DNA shows a common motherhood. The nuclear DNA can show the common fatherhood. Now, when you're going to postulate, however, that, okay, we have a 60% or so likely similarity with a chimp, and that's being generous. When you make that observation and you say, okay, we have a 60%, even a 90% similarity in DNA, then what do? That's your observation. Now, your hypothesis.
Are you really going to do this again?
No, I'm telling you the truth, and it's just something that all the weed in the world ain't going to get you past. The thing is, though,
it's still not for you.
Hold on, you wanted an answer. You're going to get an answer.
It's still not for you. It's for the shoulder. Shoulder injury.
That's all right. That's all right. That has nothing to do with this answer. So. That's
why you brought it up first.
Hold on. What is your observation? Your observation between the chimp and the human is what?
My observation is that genetic similarity denotes relatedness.
No. You see, you don't know the difference between your observation and your hypothesis. Your observation. Hold on. If I got to explain this to you, your observation is that there is a similarity. Your hypothesis is that that similarity denotes a relation. Yes, that is your hypothesis. If you can't figure this, you don't know a thing about scientific method. Okay?
The observation is the trend.
No. The observation is the similarity. Hold on.
Trend.
No, you don't observe a relationship.
No, you deserve a trend. You can observe a trend in the data.
You don't have this trend in proof. Okay, what you have is you have a common similarity between two types of animal groups. You have the chimpanzee over here, you have modern man over here, and you say, okay, there's somewhere between a 60 or 90% similarity. That's what you observe, and that's all you observe. Now, from that observation, you develop your hypothesis. The hypothesis of the atheist that believes in evolution is that we have a common ancestor. We are therefore related as distant cousins. Now that you have your hypothesis that's built on your observation, you have to test that hypothesis. And that's where your paternity test comes in. Because now you need that common ancestor, you need its DNA to see whether or not it is a common ancestor between man and chimpanzee. Your problem is you don't have a common ancestor you can even point to, nor do you have any DNA from that alleged common ancestor to test your theory. Your theory is therefore an unfalsifiable hypothesis, and it's as good as science fiction. That's all it is. That is the scientific process. And that's why the paternity test screws your position. It doesn't help your position at all. The paternity test proves that your hypothesis isn't even falsifiable. It's not even science. Science has to be falsifiable. That's part of the scientific method. If it's not falsifiable, it's not science. Go ahead.
All right. I got 3 points, and I'm really hoping that I can get through these quickly without being interrupted constantly. So here's hoping. Point number 1. You don't get to decide what my position is.
Hold on.
To you.
I did not tell you your position. I'm telling you that if you are claiming to be an atheist, you cannot hold the creationist position. You have to hold to abiogenesis as the origin of life. You don't have a choice. Now, if you want to change your position and say, okay, I'm not an atheist, and I accept that creation may be possible, then you have two possibilities, okay?
You good?
Yeah, now you tell me how you have two possibilities if you're going to hold to atheism.
I have 3 points, and I'm hoping to get through these without being constantly interrupted.
Well, that was one.
My first point is that you don't get to decide what my position is.
Hold on.
Let me finish, Eric.
No, wait. Didn't we just go over this point?
No, because you interrupted it halfway through and addressed something.
How are you going to say that I cannot use common sense? You're the one telling me you're an atheist. You only have two choices for the origin of life. Okay, the origin of life in the universe.
Point 1 with you.
That's because you keep coming up with this ridiculous crap saying that I can't tell you your position. You're telling me. Hold on. You are telling me your position when you tell me you're an atheist. Okay, because as an atheist, you cannot hold to creationism. And that's your only other choice.
Do you think all atheists believe the same things?
All atheists have to believe in abiogenesis, because you cannot, unless you're going to sit there and tell me that you never even thought your position through. That's what it looks like to me.
Okay, you could do what Fred Hoyle did and do the whole panspermia thing and just
that doesn't explain life in the universe. That explains life on Earth. We're talking.
That's why I said
hold on. Panspermia don't work as a panspermia. See, you're not even thinking this position through. Panspermia does not work. Hold on. Panspermia does not work as the origin of life in the universe. Why?
I know this, Eric.
Okay, tell us.
I know that panspermia only explains how one planet got life.
Okay.
From an outside source that already existed in the universe.
So you're conceding. So you're conceding.
Finish my one point, Eric.
Hold on.
One.
So you're conceding that what I just said is true. That as an atheist, your only position for the origin of life in the universe can be abiogenesis.
The only one I'm aware of.
Okay, so you concede that point. Now,
not the only one possible, the only one I'm aware of.
Yeah, but the only one possible as far as anybody knows, okay? Other than creation. Okay, so what's your second point?
You never heard the first point because you interrupted me.
Your first point was that I can't tell you your position. My answer to that point was you tell me your position when you claim
that
atheism.
Wasn't my first point.
That was your
first half of one sentence.
Okay, so we got that squared away. You tell me your position is abiogenesis.
I write this shit out with you because you keep interrupting me.
Well, I gotta correct you, dude. I'm not gonna let you sit there and get away with crap, dude. And that was crap.
Okay. So I'll sit here and listen to you babble for a while, and when you're done, I will go back to what I'm saying.
No, you've already conceded I'm right. Go ahead. What's the rest of your point?
Okay. The rest of my point is you don't get to decide what it is that I believe. So when I tell you, hey, this is the point I'm bringing to you, you do not get to go, I don't actually want to pay attention to that and talk about other things.
That ain't what just happened. That's not what just happened. Okay, what just happened is you told me you're an atheist. Now we've only got two choices as far as anybody who knows this. Everybody in the entire world and throughout history. Now stop acting like an ignorant little kid. Okay, have an intelligent conversation.
You're just saying the same things over
and over.
No,
I am correcting you.
Letting me finish my first point.
Okay, well, you listen up and then you can go to your second point. Your first point is absolutely wrong when you try to say that as an atheist, I don't already know what your position is. Nobody has a number 3. Nobody has a third position to lay out here. Nobody, as far as the origin of life in the universe. Now, if you haven't thought your own position through to that point that you know that you don't know that, then, that's your flaw. I'm not responsible for you not thinking your own position through. So, as an atheist, as a creationist, I tell you, I believe in creation. As a creationist, that is my only choice. You can say, okay, he doesn't believe abiogenesis occurred. He is a creationist, and you would be right. Now, as an atheist, you only have one position. And so when you define yourself as an atheist, you are telling me what your position is. You believe abiogenesis is the cause for life in the universe, period. It's that simple.
Yep.
So what's your second point?
Well, the end of my first point was referring to a point that was not about abiogenesis, but you kept interrupting me, so you didn't hear it. I was saying, when I was talking about the observation of the trend that genetic similarity denotes relatedness, because that is a trend within a data set, that was the point.
And that's a non-point. You see, you don't have a way to falsify your hypothesis.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
No, you do not.
That's the hypothesis. Yes, I do. I can give you 2 ways.
No, you can't.
2.
Do you even know what a falsifiable test is?
Yes, it is a test that demonstrates a hypothesis to be false. Conclusively. It demonstrates that there is at least an exception to the rule that's trying to be presented.
And what is the only test that's able to prove that we are not related to the chimp?
I wasn't even going that far.
Well, that's because you haven't thought your position through. Now
No,
I'm asking you.
More basic
I am asking you, what is the only test that exists that can prove we are not related to the chimp?
Well, actually, there are a few ways to potentially.
No, there are not. There is only one test that could potentially prove that we are not related to the chimpanzee, and that's if you do a DNA test on the alleged common ancestor. That is the only way that you can potentially falsify that hypothesis.
Eric, I have a really simple question for you. I really want to try this. Okay.
Go ahead.
I want to take you back to science class, and
No,
I know.
no.
I'm sure that sounds like an insult, but I promise you, it's not.
I want you to prove me wrong.
Okay. I can do that.
Go ahead.
Okay. You have two groups of people. Let's call them Group A and Group B. Each group has 2 members, so 4 people in total. Follow? Group A, we do DNA tests on both of them. Okay. We find a genetic similarity rating of 99.99999. Okay. And then we look at another group, Group B, also 2 members. We do a genetic similarity test on them and find their similarity is only 99.9. Which of the 2 groups, Group A or Group B, are more related to one another?
Look, here you have 2 groups of what?
Anything. People, dogs, plants, anything. You have
hold on. Let's take this a point at a time. Okay. We have 2 groups in your example here. We have 2 groups of humans.
Sure.
Right? Okay. We all know that we're humans. We all know that humans are related.
Okay.
Period.
That's not what I'm asking.
We already hold on. That's what I'm saying. That has nothing to do with your other hypothesis. Okay? Because we know that humans are related. Now, I can look at the similarity of the DNA between a chimp and a human, or all living things, and I can say, okay, God used common building blocks. It's just like you could have a brick building, you can have a block building, you can have a dirt building, you can have a building made of wood, and you've got common elements in all of these buildings, okay? That's because they were built with similar things. That does not mean that they are all the same type of building. They were just built with similar things.
But that's my point.
Hold on. So I want to show you why you don't have a point here. In the same way, we know that human beings are related. In the same way, we know that all dogs are related. In the same way, we know that all chickens are related. In the same way, we know that all elephants are related.
All dogs aren't related.
Of course they are. Now,
what about the African painted dog that can't interbreed with any of the domestic breeds?
Well, it's obviously. You see,
but
that's
still a dog.
No, that's a dog in name. You don't know that is a dog. It's obviously a different species. Okay. Now, mankind is the same species, Homo sapien. Hold on. Mankind is the same species, Homo sapien. Now, here's the point. You don't know that we are related to the chimp. I look at that similarity and I say God used DNA. God used similar building blocks for all life.
Okay, sure.
Hold on. Now, you've got to test your hypothesis in such a way that you can prove it right or wrong. Okay?
I know 2 ways to do that.
No, you do not.
I do.
No, you do not. You just tried it.
I do. There are 2 ways, and I haven't even brought them up yet.
Just listen. The only possible way you can prove that wrong is to test the alleged common ancestor. DNA test of the alleged common ancestor. Otherwise, you're looking at similarities and you're assuming that we are related. You can't just assume it. Well, are you admitting it now? That you are assuming that we are related to the chimp?
If
Are
genetic
you?
similarity denotes relatedness, and we share genetic similarity with
No,
chimps,
see, wait.
we are related.
Wait. See, you're assuming again. You're assuming you don't know the scientific method from the. Listen,
the line?
you
Why
don't
is the
know.
line?
You don't know the scientific method from the back of your head, dude. You don't even know the difference between your observation and your hypothesis. Your observation, the only observation you have, is that there is a similarity in the DNA between mankind and chimps. You do not observe that denotes a relatedness between us. That is your hypothesis, not your observation.
And we can test
Dude, learn scientific method. Now, if you're going to falsify that hypothesis, you have to come up with a test that could potentially prove it right or wrong. A DNA test between the two animal groups here, chimps and humans, with the common ancestor that you allege is the common ancestor. That's the only way to falsify this. There is no other way. Now, the point being, you can't even point to a common ancestor. Tell me what the common ancestor is you think.
I can do a common ancestor.
Do one. Between man and chimp, what is the common ancestor?
Well, now that I think about it, okay. So if I had to do one that would be like a definite thing rather than like a probably thing, I would have to go. I would have to go Egyptopithecus. That would be it.
You would go what now?
Egyptopithecus.
And how do you know that's a common ancestor?
Well, I figure there's only a few different possible ways for a more basal monkey-like primate to become a slightly more advanced ape-like primate, which is what Egyptopithecus is. It's essentially a ape-like monkey.
So do you have the DNA of the Egyptopithecus?
No, we don't need it.
No, you don't. So you don't know that's a common ancestor. You're just guessing. And you can't prove
on everything else.
No. You cannot. You're guessing. You're saying you're looking at the morphology. That's all you're doing. You're saying here's a chimpanzee, here's a human. My hypothesis is that they are related. Now I look at this Egyptopithecus, and I'm going to guess, I'm going to look at the morphology, and I'm going to guess and hypothesize that this is a common ancestor. But you don't have the DNA to test it to see whether or not it is a common ancestor. So you don't have the DNA of anything that you can test as a common ancestor to prove that we are related to the chimp.
Again,
so wow, thank you guys for dropping in. Raw, EMC, Rob, yeah, they don't think that they do need it. So the point being with Jack here is that we don't have the DNA to test any of these theories of evolution.
Sorry.
Hello, Jack. Welcome back. So the point is, Jack, you have the observation that there is a similarity in the DNA between man and chimp. You have a hypothesis now that we are related. And then you look through the fossils and you point out to Egyptopithecus and you say, this is our common ancestor, but you don't have the DNA to test to see whether or not that really is a common ancestor. And therefore, you have no way to test your hypothesis that man is related to chimp. So, how do you respond to that?
Is it at all possible to get like a solid minute to actually speak?
Yeah, I'm just asking you, how do you respond to not having the DNA to test any of these hypotheses?
Can I do so without being interrupted?
Yeah, if you want to respond and really give me an answer to that, sure.
Sure. The answer is we don't need it. And the same exact reason
wait.
why
What do you mean we don't need it?
We don't need the DNA that we couldn't possibly have anyway. Now,
you don't, hold on. Are you telling me you don't need the DNA of the Egyptopithecus to see whether or not it is related to us?
You yourself explained why earlier in this video. You were bringing up the difference between the genetic test of mitochondrial DNA and the test between.
You just said you don't have you don't have any DNA.
Yeah, right. But hear me on this, please. You brought up those two different DNA tests, right?
That has nothing to do with what we're talking about now. We've moved on from that. The point is, how do you respond to not having how do you respond to not having the DNA of the Egyptopithecus to prove that it's a common ancestor? Or do you concede that you have no way to prove that it's a common ancestor?
Okay, real quick, I just want to test this for posterity. We don't need the DNA if we have the DNA of living things that we can compare now in the same exact way that we can compare your DNA.
That's the most ridiculous.
Your husband's DNA to determine your grandmother.
So you don't know. You don't have
DNA.
You don't have a clue how science works, do you?
Dude,
you don't have a
you
clue.
Won't let me speak for 20 seconds.
You don't have a clue what the scientific method is. I asked you specifically, how do you answer the fact that you're claiming Egyptopithecus is? Hold on. You're claiming Egyptopithecus is a common ancestor to man and chimp, and yet you concede that you don't have the DNA to prove whether or not it is a common ancestor, and then you say you don't even need it. So how are you going to prove it's a common ancestor? Looking at it? Say, oh, look, the morphology, it states that it is related. That's ridiculous.
When I talk about Egyptopithecus, do you think I'm talking about one creature or a population of them?
I don't care if you're talking about one or all of them. You don't have the DNA of any of them.
So you do get that when we find a fossil of like a hominid or something like that and say, hey, this is probably ancestral to humans, that we're not pointing to this.
Probably is a bunch of probably is a bunch of crap. Okay.
But
now, do you know what Colin Patterson? Do you know who he is? Have any clue at all?
Colin Patterson, not offhand.
He was the curator, the senior paleontologist for the British Museum of Natural History. He was an evolutionist. He was not a creationist. He wrote books on evolution. He did tours talking about evolution. And he came right out and said, when he was asked, why don't you discuss transitionals? Do you know what he said? He says, I don't put any pictures of transitional fossils in any of my books, and I don't talk about them because we don't have any way to put that to the test. It's not even science. You see, that's the difference. You don't know. You don't have a clue, Jack, what the scientific.
context of what that actually means, it's a really profound distinction to make in this topic.
You don't have the slightest
But
clue what scientific
you
method
just
is.
strip it to the most basic form. It's just sad.
You don't have a clue how the scientific method works. That's what it boils down to, Jack. You don't have a clue.
I have a hypothesis.
Yeah, and it's unfalsifiable.
I can give you 2 ways to falsify it.
No, you can't.
I can't.
No, you can't. No, you can't.
Can I show you?
We just proved you can't.
Can I show you?
Hold on. Okay. Falsify whether or not Egyptopithecus is our common ancestor. Do it now.
That wasn't my hypothesis. My
Falsify.
hypothesis was.
All right, then hold on. And concede the fact that you can't prove that Egyptopithecus is related to man. Concede that.
I can't disprove it either. Funny how that works.
You can't prove it. Concede that point. It's an unfalsifiable hypothesis. Concede that point.
I would say it could probably be done, just not to 100%.
No, it cannot be done without the DNA. Concede that point.
No, that's not how this works.
So either you don't know how science works or you're being dishonest. I don't know, and I don't care which it is. It's one or the other.
You can't even let me describe my hypothesis to you.
You just explained that you hypothesize. Hold on.
That's not it.
Hold on. I am not going to let you run through 30 hypotheses and leave 29 of them. Hold on. And leave 29 of them hanging in the air. We are going to either get proof or a concession on this hypothesis right here.
Okay. I cannot absolutely prove the arbitrary thing you want me to prove.
Okay. In other words, you concede.
Whatever.
You concede, hold on. You concede that you don't have the DNA to prove whether or not Egyptopithecus is a common ancestor between men and the chimp. Is that correct?
I do not have Egyptopithecus's DNA. No.
Okay. So, can you point to any other common ancestor between men and chimp?
Again, I can falsify my hypothesis in 2 ways if you will let me say my hypothesis.
I'm just asking, do you have any other common ancestor?
I'm playing this game. It's not how it works.
In other words, you can't.
No,
you cannot.
It's not how it works, Eric. You don't get to point to something and say that was definitely ancestral and that definitely wasn't without a very good reason, which is why no one does that for things we don't have DNA for.
What?
We talk about that.
You still don't even understand the point, Jack. You don't even understand the point.
You won't let me say the point.
Do you know what the point is? Do you know what the point I'm making is?
Which one?
Do you have any idea what the point is? Are you even listening?
The point is you want DNA that you know we cannot possibly have.
No, I do not. I want you to admit that your hypotheses are unfalsifiable. Man up and admit the truth that when it comes to the common ancestry of man and the chimp, you don't have a single hypothesis that you can falsify. Not a single one. Isn't that true?
Genetic similarity denotes relatedness.
No, that's your hypothesis.
Yes.
Okay, and
genetic similarity denotes relatedness is the hypothesis.
And
there are ways to falsify this. Eric,
good Lord.
If you can show me
hold on.
Definitely related that don't share genetic similarity.
Hold on. Okay. Here's the point, Jack. You got to quit interrupting me so we can have a conversation that everybody can appreciate and listen to. Okay, so I'm going to unmute you. I don't want to mute you. I want to keep you unmuted. Here's what I'm saying. We know that humans are related. We know that dogs are related. We know that cats are related. Okay, we know all that. Now, you're claiming something that I don't believe.
Cool.
Hold on. You're claiming that we are related to the chimp. Okay? Now, I disagree with that. I think that the similarity is evidence of a common creator of both of these organisms. So now we have two different competing hypotheses.
Generous.
Okay. Now, what we have to do, we have to falsify these hypotheses. Okay. Now, there's only one way for you to falsify your hypothesis, and only one.
Pigeonholing me into this
Hold
is
on.
not going to work.
What?
Pigeonholing me.
I'm not pigeonholing you. This is logic. Do you not understand logic? Okay, do you not understand the scientific method? Here is the
point one.
Here is the scientific method. Okay, I'm muting you again so you can hear scientific method. The scientific method says that you make your observation, you develop your hypothesis, and then you put it through a falsification process. If you don't understand what a falsification process is now, it is the test by which you can prove your hypothesis right or wrong. Okay? Now, there's only one way. If I had the hypothesis that I was related to my father, quit acting like a child, son. You're acting like a child. If you can't even listen, that's your problem. That's not mine. If you don't understand scientific method, that's your problem. That's not mine. Now, here's what I'm saying. If you want to just do this and not even pay attention, you might as well go. Okay? The point is this. In order to prove your hypothesis wrong, in order to falsify it, you have to have a common ancestor to point to. And then you have to have the DNA of that common ancestor to falsify your hypothesis. And since you don't have neither one, you don't have a falsifiable hypothesis. It's not even science. It doesn't even qualify as science. So now, getting back to the origin of life, because we've been wasting all this time on stuff that evidently you don't even know what the scientific method is. Getting back to the origin of life, we only have two possibilities between the atheist and the creationist. You, as the atheist, have to go with abiogenesis, and I, as the creationist, go. What?
And you have the unfalsifiable proposition of an unnatural deity.
No. How do you figure an unnatural deity? That's life bringing forth life. Okay? And I happen to know this deity exists. I have personal experience with this deity. This deity has healed me. This deity has answered my prayers. I have literally heard this deity. Okay? This deity leads me. This deity has healed me. So I know this deity personally, as do millions of others. Now, this science tells us that there is a force in the universe, and this force expands the universe and holds it together. It's invisible. It is omnipresent. It's everywhere. In every known description, it mirrors the Christian God. They say they observe this force. Okay? So we have falsifiable evidence of our God. Also, with biogenesis, stating that only life can bring forth life. We have falsifiable evidence of God. Now, on the other hand, every single life form proves that biogenesis.
Probably got it.
Every single life form proves that biogenesis is true.
I'm about to put that in.
Whereas on the other hand, Jack, you don't have a bit of evidence for abiogenesis being true. None.
Eric again.
Not a single observation of abiogenesis. Not a single one.
Because I'm apparently masochistic. I don't know.
And you're right, Raw. He really doesn't understand. He doesn't even understand the scientific procedure. I think it's amazing that he would sit here and try to debate this when he doesn't even know what scientific procedure is, and he doesn't know the difference between his observation and his hypothesis. He thinks one is they're both the same thing when they're not. So do you have
It's just as pointless as I thought it was going to be.
Okay, well, what's pointless? What's pointless is your argument, because you don't have a single argument for abiogenesis, not a single instance of it ever being true.
Actually, I do have the paper that we never got into.
Okay, does it say that they've reproduced abiogenesis?
Why would they need to? Why
would they need to? Why do they need to produce? Why do they need to produce life to prove abiogenesis?
They don't have to reproduce a murder to figure out how that murder occurred.
Do what?
Like, hello?
What are you trying to say?
Because you don't have to make a thing happen again to figure out how the thing happened.
So you're just going to say it poofed out of thin air.
No.
Okay. You don't have to make that. You don't have to observe that. You don't have to test that. So you're going to say, okay, all these proteins and everything just randomly form together and produce life.
Not randomly.
Of course, it's random.
No.
There again,
it's according to the laws of physics.
There again, you don't even understand science. You don't even understand
because it's not random. It's deterministic.
You don't think it's random?
No, I think it's highly deterministic. In the same way that I can figure out, I can throw this.
No,
and if I know
you're entirely
every
wrong.
Factor that goes into this throw, how hard I'm going to throw it, in what angle, the way it's going to turn, and the way the air resistance is going to work. If I knew every single factor that went into this single throw, I could close my eyes and do it 1,000 times.
There
again, still land in the same place every single time.
There again, you don't have the slightest idea.
Every single time.
You don't have the slightest idea what you're talking about, and I'm going to prove it. I have a clip here.
You faff about
this
on
is
your
what
own. I've got some things I got to do.
This is what a real. This is what a real scientist.
Later,
this is what a real scientist. This is what a real scientist says about randomness of abiogenesis. Randomly, there you go. Random stuff bumping into each other to create that first molecule A. That's what this is. It is random stuff. So there you go. There's a scientist telling you that you're wrong. Abiogenesis is entirely random. If it happened at all, and the evidence is it hasn't happened, because you can't make it happen in the lab, and you've never observed it happen. And he's gone with that. I guess that's all it took to run him off. So, and it's really sad that he would choose to run off. It's really sad that he would choose to not pay attention to the scientist that says abiogenesis is random. The poor fella. Now, let me share something with you real quick, guys. This is all the atheists have. So many Christians I know are intimidated by a lot of these guys. And they don't know the first thing about science. Everything they think they know is wrong. Right down to claiming that abiogenesis is not a random process. Of course it's entirely random. When they claim that all of these proteins and etc. just randomly bumped into each other and combined. There was no creator. There was no designer. It was all random. And that's what they're depending on. And then so is evolution. Evolution is random. You get random mutations, but they don't know very much about evolution. So then they claim that we have all these common ancestors with all of these various animals. They claim that we had a common ancestor with Neanderthal. But it's obvious that we interbred and we produced fertile offspring with Neanderthal and Denisovan. We have the DNA to prove it, which proves that we're not cousins at all. We are exactly the same species. That would be like saying we're not related to the Zulu or the Italians or the Pygmies or the Nordics. We're all related, as were Neanderthal and Denisovan. So then they say we're related to the chimp. And the fact that he tries to say that the fact that we have similar DNA proves relatedness. And he doesn't even realize the difference between his observation and his hypothesis. His observation is a similarity in DNA, and his hypothesis then becomes that we are related. He's allowed to hold that hypothesis. It's no sweat off our backs. He can believe whatever he wants. So the point is, though, brothers and sisters, if he doesn't even know the difference between his observation and his hypothesis, what in the world is he doing trying to argue it? And then he doesn't even realize that his hypothesis is not even falsifiable. His hypothesis is that we have a common ancestor with the chimpanzee, but he can't even point to that common ancestor. He says, well, it might be this, or it might be that. It may be this. He has no idea. And then, even if he points one out, he doesn't have the DNA to put it to the test, to prove that it is, in fact, a common ancestor. And that's all they have, my friends. Basically nothing. Just a mess. So, he was stoned. Yes, he was stoned. And that's too bad. That could be part of his problem, you know. The sad part to all this is, my friends, they don't even realize how much they don't know, how much they have been indoctrinated. See, they get all this stuff pounded into their head from the time they're little. And he's a millennial, so from the time he was in his crib till probably this afternoon, he's had all this pounded in his head. He had a scientific paper he wanted to present that he said proves abiogenesis. Earlier, when we were in chat, he was saying that the fact that there's an earth proves abiogenesis, like the earth is a life form that came about through a natural process. See, they just say the most ridiculous things. I released a 2-minute video earlier today. I've taken some of my videos with debates with some of these guys where they make the most ridiculous comments. I literally had one atheist say about a month ago that given enough time, a tornado could rip through a junkyard, machine all the parts to build a 747, make its software, put together a perfect working 747 jet, let it develop a metabolism and a reproductive means, a way to reproduce itself, and pop to life. He literally said, if given enough time, that could happen. That's how ridiculous and absurd these atheists get. If you don't believe me, I just uploaded that 2-minute video about 10 o'clock this morning. Check it out. You'll be amazed. That's how desperate these guys are. That's how ridiculous and absurd their position really is. So it's the creationist that has the provable positions. Biogenesis proves that creationism is the only credible idea out there. Every life form we can point to was brought forth by a previous life form. Every single one. Not a single life form can we point to and say this came about randomly through non-living materials. Not a single one can we point to and say that. Every life form that we can point to in the fossil record, every life form that we can point to today, every single one was brought forth through natural means, through reproduction, one life giving forth life to another life. So to believe in abiogenesis, to believe what the atheists believe, is to believe in the absurd. And then at the beginning of our talk here, he was calling abiogenesis a natural method. And I asked him, how is it natural when you never observe it in nature? Natural is that which you observe in nature. So what is nature? What does nature teach us? What is natural when it comes to life? What is natural is that life brings forth life, and never does it come about any other way. Therefore, that first life was brought forth by God. That first life was brought forth by another life. That's what nature teaches us. So nature teaches us that our position is the natural position. Nature teaches us that our position is the reasonable position. And you got to be a little bit, I don't like to be argumentative. I really don't. But you got to be kind of forceful with these guys to keep them on track, or else they will just meander around and waste hours, and you don't get anywhere. But he had to concede, and you saw it for yourself. He had to concede that there's not a single common ancestor that he can point to that we can test. It's not a falsifiable hypothesis. Not a single one. So there you have it in a nutshell. Atheists, most generally, at least internet atheists, Facebook atheists, YouTube atheists, they don't have the slightest idea what even scientific method is. They can't give you a falsifiable hypothesis when it comes to evolution and abiogenesis. Not a one. And you have to be kind of forceful to make them concede that point. But if you stay on them and you don't cut them any slack, they will eventually concede it. But you can't let them get away with it because they're awful squirrely. Let me tell you, there ain't nothing squirrely like an internet atheist. And that's just the unfortunate truth. They're more squirrely than the squirrels we have here in Kentucky. So maybe that's why they do so well. They survive. They just run well. So I want to thank you guys for popping in and for listening. Would anybody like to come aboard here? Let me see if I can pop. I'm going to put this in the chat. And if anybody would like to drop in, that's right, EMC. Let God be true and every man a liar. That's worth displaying. So, if anybody would like to pop in, say hello, share a little fellowship, you can feel free. Otherwise, I'll just wrap it up because we've already been on like an hour and a half. And I don't want to bore everybody to death. And I do have a wonderful little wife here that I like to spend my time with. and our best little friend, Mr. Malachi. Mr. Malachi is a wonderful friend. He's been my best little friend for 14 years, 15 years now. So I would share a little picture of him here, if I could. This is Mr. Malachi, my best little buddy of, 15 years, I guess. Met him in the spring 15 years ago. He bounced into our lives, and he's been our best little friend and guardian ever since. Just a wonderful part of the family. And I'd show my wife off, but she's mine, guys. Sorry. So I really appreciate you all. I thank you all. I recently got a phone, and every time I try to jump on StreamYard, it won't let my audio work. That's really strange, buddy. And I'm very sorry to hear that. Maybe you can get that figured out, or it could be some kind of a technical problem. I have no idea what it would be. Maybe there's some kind of a setting on your phone that you'll have to set for that. I'm glad you enjoyed seeing Mr. Malachi. He's earned his moniker of Mr., let me tell you. He's quite a fellow. My wife and our other little dog and Mr. Malachi was attacked by 2 large pit bulls, and Mr. Malachi and the other little fella fought back to try to protect their mother. And we lost the other little fella. And Mr. Malachi was injured, but he made it through. And he did his best to protect us, and he always does. So he's a wonderful blessing from the Lord and a good friend. And ladies and gentlemen, well, I'm sure that that'll get ironed out one way or the other. And I do look forward to having you on sometime, my friend. I really, really do. Just to share fellowship. And I'm glad we can at least share fellowship and chat the way we do. I'm very glad for that. So, wonderful friends, God bless you all. Well, thank you very, very much for listening in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. As boisterous as it was, I think it did prove a point that the atheist, the internet atheist, doesn't even know what they're talking about. They have nothing to stand on. Yes, my friend, thank you very much for that. So the internet atheist has nothing to stand on. They have no falsifiable arguments that they can present to us when it comes to evolution, when it comes to common ancestors, when it comes to abiogenesis. They can't prove any of it. Everything they point to fails. You know, they used to try to say that the dire wolf was the ancestor to the wolves and the dogs. Well, they tested his DNA, and it's not even similar. They said it's a totally different lineage from any of them. So when it comes right down to it, they none of them really know what they're talking about. They parrot a lot of things, and that's all they've got is parroting. And half of what they're parroting is just propaganda. It's indoctrination. They talk about Christians being indoctrinated, and granted, there's some denominations out there that do indoctrinate. I won't deny that. But then there's the Christian that stands on the Word of God, that's not indoctrinated by anybody. They just follow God. Evolutionists, atheists, on the other hand, are entirely indoctrinated. They're taught that the Neanderthal is the cousin to mankind when it's obvious through DNA that we're the same species. We interbred and produced fertile offspring. That's the very definition of a biological species, of a sexual or reproductive animal. They try to say we have a common ancestor with the chimp, yet they can't provide that common ancestor or the DNA to prove it. They try to say life evolved through abiogenesis. And then when you try to tell them, okay, you have to believe in abiogenesis as an atheist, they say, well, no, I don't. Well, of course they do. There's only two positions, abiogenesis and creation. And then they get mad because you make them defend abiogenesis. Why do they get mad? Because they can't defend it. Because its every attempt to create life has failed and has never been observed in the laboratory or in nature. It proves to be absurd. Non-life does not bring forth life randomly. It just never happens, and they can't make it happen in a lab. Life always has to come about by life. Intelligence and consciousness only comes about because of another intelligence and consciousness. These are the things that prove true, and all of these things back the creationist. So, if you want to see some of the ridiculous things that atheists say, I've got a bunch of very short videos, anywhere from, I think the shortest one is like 1.5 minutes, and the longest one is like 6 or 7 minutes, something like that. If you want to see some of the ridiculous things that atheists say, I think I've got about 8 or 10 of them up right now, and I'm going to be posting more in the coming days, about 10 o'clock every morning. If you want to see the atheist that said that he believes a tornado can build a 747 that can pop to life and reproduce itself, he literally really said that. That's how absurd atheists can get. I just uploaded that one this morning. I think you'll enjoy it. Check it out. And so, my friends, I've got to pop off. Thank you very much. I hate to do that. I hate to leave good company and good fellowship, and you guys are certainly that. Good company and good fellowship, and I love you all. And I can send you love and greetings from my wife, Miss Lee, and our best little friend and guardian, Mr. Malachi. We all love you. God bless you. Thank you so very much. We'll see you later, guys. Thank you very much for coming in, Raw, and all the rest of you here. Rob, I saw you earlier. Thank you for popping in, and all the rest of you, EMC, thank you for listening. God bless you, and good night. We love you all very much. Goodbye.